Good evening. I should know what the date is. Thursday, the 30th of July at 6 o'clock. Delighted to have regular BB Elsin, Beth Rogers here. Beth Rogers in her non-fiction, but we're here for her fiction. She's BB Elsin. And I have, next time, we'll talk about Coffee and Commute, which I have. And we're going to be talking about your first novel. I know you're in the depths of writing the second one or the follow-up. So we're talking about heroes and traitors. And this is one of a fairly new series called Tell Us About Your Books, which follows on from the Spotlights. So Beth and I have done a Spotlight, and where we talked about her journey from the first thing she remembers writing right up to what you're working on next. And so this is the natural progression from the Spotlights, where we talk about each session, we'll talk about different books. So Beth at the moment has two. I don't know where you might want to do one about your textbooks. I don't know. You'll be very welcome. But certainly
But
these two
it might
books.
be worth a try.
Yes, why not? We don't get a lot of non-fiction, so yeah, why not? And so we're starting off with heroes and traitors, and then perhaps coffee and commute next time, whenever suits you. So we'll yes, we'll arrange a date and time for that. So what led you? I know we've talked about, and the spotlights people can go and see on your page and on YouTube. Um, that it's we talk about genre and how you came to writing what you do. But how did this one come about? Heroes and traitors. How did you get the idea, and um, did you fall into this genre because it's a genre you read mostly?
I do read a lot of fantasy, and I enjoy it, and I like watching it on TV and in films as well. Um, but I suppose that the book is there because of my love of history, the knowledge that I keep seeking about history, particularly the English Civil War period and the Republic. And I thought that that would be a great thing to have more books about because, oh gosh, there's so much about the Tudors. And then the War of the Roses got popular for a while. But this period, which is so unusual and so, I mean, it was called The World Turned Upside Down because it really questioned the way things have been for centuries, and turned them on their head. Lots of really radical and revolutionary ideas emerged in the 1640s and 1650s. So I felt, right, okay, the way to get people interested is the fiction route, and I'd come to a place in my life where I wanted to write fiction. And I was going to make it pretty historical. But I discovered I just wanted to mix things up a bit, that the historical characters who were um, inspiring me, they came from overlapping periods. They weren't necessarily going to fit in the right way because historical novelists always say, well, you have to do your research, get things right, otherwise,
Yes,
people who know the period even better than you do will complain, quite rightly.
absolutely.
So I thought, well, I don't want to make this like a textbook. I know how to do textbooks. I do them in another specialism, and I'm not good enough to do that in history. So I thought, well, a lot of fantasies have had their roots in history. Game of Thrones was inspired by the War of the Roses, and so of course when I first started reading that, I was thinking, oh yes, Tyrion's definitely Richard III, and
Mm.
Cersei's definitely Elizabeth Woodville, and so on and so forth. But I just thought to myself, right, okay, I will take these inspirations and I will mix it all up. And that way I can get really creative and make different things happen from what happened in history. I do always try and have a spark of history in every character, every scenario, but the mix is definitely fantasy.
So, how do you go about? Are you a planner, a plotter, a pantser, a planner, or somewhere in between? Once
I
you once
was
you've got the ideas, how did you?
the heroes and traitors. I was doing a course. We started your novel quite logically.
Mm,
Um, and I really just had one scene in my head, which I worked on. And it's still there in the book, although very much changed from the original.
okay.
Um, and uh, there was an element of supervision for the first three chapters, and then we were kind of on our own to finish.
Mm,
And um, so, in a way, I just scrabbled to finish, but it was definitely an evolutionary process. I kind of tried to make plans, and then every time I did that, I ended up having to tear them up. So, um, and
often
I think, down to the ninth edit, I would, I,
counting them or estimate.
yeah, I think even at a very late stage, I added a scene to give some kind of, I don't know, just a kind of spark to illuminate something else that was going on. So yes, definitely a pantser for the first one.
Right.
The sequel, I am trying to do a bit more planning. I waited a long time to even put anything on paper by way of where this um, begins, where it ends, and what I want to put in the middle.
Mm,
And I'm still changing it. I'm coming towards the end of the fourth part of seven.
okay.
So I'd say I'm kind of midway.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to be a bit more organized.
Right. And Heroes and Traitors is quite a big book. Is it going to be about the same sort of length? Because historical and fantasy books, you can they can be as long as they need to be, really,
Mhm.
and readers are very accepting on that.
Yes,
Because you're creating a world and
yes, yeah.
giving more detail, probably.
Something like 307, oh, 350 pages,
Mm,
Heroes and Traitors.
mm,
Um, I think the sequel will be a bit less.
okay.
Um, maybe, I mean, that's 117,000 and my target is 100,000.
Mm.
I don't want to go over it, um, but who knows?
Sure, exactly. And did you find when you finished the first or ninth draft that you did a lot of changing? Was the final version very different to the early? And the scene you had initially in mind,
Mhm,
which you say is still exists in a different form,
mhm.
is it the start to the book or is it partway through now?
Well, originally it was the start to the book, um, and it is now, I think, in the second chapter,
Okay, so
and
early on.
it is where some uh, antagonism unfolds between the main character, the hero, and the main villain. Although it's kind of a bit of a strong word, but the person who has a grudge.
Yes,
Um,
antagonist.
and I was originally going to put that first, Um, but I was encouraged at a certain point in my learning journey
Mm,
to have something much more active and
right.
sort of in your face as,
Yes, as
as it-
starts should be.
yeah.
Yes. Can you read the back jacket blurb and then either we had a bit of a chat before I pressed record and you've selected somewhere middle-ish. So have the
Hmm.
blurb and then tell us sort of leading up to
Yeah.
the
Yes,
extract.
whichever you prefer, I can read the opening or read a
I don't
bit.
mind. I don't mind. Whichever you feel
Mhm.
you'd like to.
Okay, so the back blurb is hero or traitor. In the final battle of a bloody civil war, Yonis, the successful general of the rebel army of truth, shocks himself by committing a reckless act of vengeance. Full of repentance, he commits to a quest for peace and starts with an unlikely marriage. Resentment and suspicion swirl around him and his new wife. Rich and poor, plotters and spies, idealists and cynics are all jostling for opportunities for gain or for revenge. The prospects for healing are fading, with old friends and loyalists turning on Yonis and the new regime losing its way. Who will help Yonis to restore hope?
Oh, there are lots of conflict, and I like the comparisons. The rich and poor and so on, and ending with a question. It's
And,
always good in a blurb to
and
end with a
obviously, it's
question.
feedback that there are too many minor characters, but I did
Okay.
hear a guy who has done some research with some big name authors speaking about a month ago, and he said, cherish your minor characters, and I certainly do that.
Mm. Well, sometimes
They've
in
all got
in
an angle on what's happening to
yeah.
hero, the main heroine, and so on.
Well, the I've got a minor character in yes after Jessica called Rick, who's a kind of quite a not powerful in any way, but a dynamic businessman, and
Mhm.
he's kind of a honcho, um, somebody who'll get things done, sidekick. And I think he was the. You don't see a lot of Jessica, so there's although it's named after her and the book's about her, she doesn't feature hugely. Um, but and he doesn't either. This guy Rick, but I really had fun with him. And there was a book I read years ago called Love. I can't remember. It'll come to me, maybe. Love Lottery or something like that by Katie Ford. Love Letters by Katie Ford. And it starts off with a character and she's going to lose her job because the bookshop's closing, and then she has to help set up a literary festival. And I can't remember her name, but her sidekick, her best friend's called Monica, and I loved Monica. And there's a quite a fine line between I actually preferred Monica, so it's kind of I love the fact that and she's that's not a minor character because she's her best friend and she features a lot. Um, but it's always interesting when readers say that they liked a particular character and they're not the main character. But also you can have there's almost like watching a film the second time where you know the plot because you've seen it already, but then you see little bits that you didn't and reading a book the second time. There are little things you realise that you hadn't really been paying attention to the first time. And
Mm,
often
yeah.
they're the minor characters. You might be in a film the first time, you might be concentrating on the hero and the heroine. And then the second time you might be looking at the people in the background and go, oh, that's interesting.
Mm,
So I love minor characters play more of a key role, I think, than a lot of people give them credit for.
When I read, I have disciplined myself to read quite slowly and
Right.
mindfully, as I would put it,
Mm.
because I think if you get too wound up in the story and you keep turning the pages as quickly as you can,
Mm,
yeah, you can lose something.
mm,
And I remember as a teenager, there was something really kind of extreme in that respect. The first time we had to read Pride and Prejudice for English,
right.
didn't like it at all. I thought it was so trivial and just, Mills and Boon for the 18th century
Mm,
and not really literature. And well, we had to do it again for O level. And then I started, I mean, lapse of a couple of years, and reading it again, reading it perhaps for a different level of study.
mm,
I started to think, wow, this is actually quite funny.
mm,
It's a bit of a spoof.
right,
She's sending up these characters as much as she is
right,
presenting this improbable romance.
right.
Um, and then, of course, I became a devotee of Jane Austen because I realised how clever the writing was.
Mm. Yeah, sadly we didn't do that. We did Jane Eyre, Moonfleet, quite dark ones, Lord of the Flies,
Mm. I
Macbeth.
was really scared by that at school.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think it was just fortunate because I did have quite a dark taste. I love Stephen King, dark books. Um, well, it's sort of psychologically dark, which obviously Lord of the Flies is very much psychological.
Mhm.
And so I think you are often shaped by your curriculum, as is going to be the way as you grow up. You're shaped by the things that you encounter over the years. So it may or may not form
Mhm.
what we go on to do. So can you explain why you've chosen the extract that you've chosen to read?
Well, actually, I just realised, having read you the back blurb with the reckless act of vengeance, that maybe I should start at the beginning.
Oh, okay,
Um, Explain how the hero comes to see himself as an anti-hero who's got to change.
right, okay,
So, um, I begin at the beginning, and I'll go on for two scenes, and then
okay,
that I think will probably be enough.
yeah, lovely.
The great moor above Tansit in the Edgelands, west coast of Primaloa, early morning, the third day of the fourth moon, year 50. Yonis's skin prickled. He peered into the grime, not knowing which way to turn his horse. His eyes and nostrils were stinging. He tried to salivate to reduce the pungent taste of gunpowder smoke. Rhythmic musket fire and the cries of men were fading, and, most chilling of all, he could not hear the drums. This did not make sense. His tactics always worked. His men always followed his lead. Was he deep behind the enemy lines? Must be. He had felt fear in battles before, but this was something worse. It was dread. Johnny started to pray. Eternal Spirit, my light and inspiration, please forgive me my many wrongdoings. Help me to endure my passage to the afterlife, and grant me everlasting rest. He felt a flicker of warmth in his heart. He had given his all for the doctrine of truth. The Spirit would not forsake him. Thunder cracked ominously. Rain followed, a pitter-patter at first, and then suddenly a downpour. This might disperse the smoke. He urged his horse to step round again. There was something not far off. The smoke swirled, and he caught a clear glimpse of a conical helmet. Instinctively, Jons urged his horse into a canter towards the helmet, his sword raised. If these were his last moments, so be it. He would go down fighting. As he closed in on the helmet, he could see a huge man underneath it, encased in heavy armor, and sat astride a well-padded saddle on a finely caparisoned horse. Yonis's stomach lurched with hatred. It had to be him. He tried to suppress it. He shouted, "Sir, surrender yourself to the army of truth. Your cause today is hopeless. You're greatly outnumbered." Jonas hoped that this was still true. He had no idea where his men were. The metal head turned slightly towards him. Was this the chance that his gut urged him to take? Jonas's head shuddered with memories of the screams of the day of lamentation. So many innocents wounded and dying, and somewhere in that cacophony had been his beloved wife gasping her last breath. Slowly, as if he might be conceding, the figure raised his gauntlet. He opened the visor of the helmet. Then he bellowed, "Never, you diabolical god-killer, widower of whore." It was him. Jonas charged, feinting to provoke a mighty blow. His target swung at him. Jonas parried. The swords parted and clashed again and again. The armoured man was big, but how much of it was brawn? Jonas backed away a few paces and then charged. His opponent's horse stamped and tossed its head as if starting to panic. Jonas saw his chance and used his broadsword to push the bigger man with all his strength and fury. As he connected, the horse bucked and bolted. The mighty column of metal was dumped into the black mud of the moor. The stricken man flailed like an overturned insect. Jonas jumped from his horse and used his sword to flick up the visor of the helmet. He hesitated. This was King Navan, for sure. Was he gasping or laughing? Jonas plunged his sword into his enemy's face. He opened his mouth and lungs, expecting a roar of triumph to come out. Instead, it was a howling sob of despair. Time passed. How many moments? Jonas had shut his eyes and tried to blank his memory. Then he found himself blinking as the sun in the east pierced the last few raindrops of the storm. The mist had cleared as suddenly as it had formed. In the distance, purple mountains, wrapped with conifer forests, were emerging from the cloud. In front of him, dead and wounded men were scattered across the grass and scrub. Crows and gulls were diving from the sky to eat the faces of the fallen. Some of Jonas's own Yerelin adventurers were rushing towards him. The Sudarite soldiers were on their knees, wailing, and they appeared to be looking at him in amazement. Their red-tattooed priests, the Ras, were staring too. Jonas turned his head. There was a glorious rainbow reaching out from the indigo waves of the Arna Gulf and arching over the moor, its colours clearly defined. That would explain their awe, and it was useful. He turned back, took off his green-plumed lobster-necked helmet, and yelled at the grovelling wretches of the enemy army. "King Yavan Glantar is dead. Submit to the army of truth. Long live the Republic of Himaloa." The army of truth, exhausted after a long campaign, found the energy to cheer in relief. Some fell to their knees, praising and thanking the eternal spirit. Some blessed each other, hugging and backslapping. Some were exuberant and roared their triumph. Some chanted for their general, but Jonas did not raise his hand to draw attention to himself. This was a time for their comradeship. Since the previous battle, they had endured days of mud, relentlessly sucking at their boots and wagon wheels, encountering the cinders of villages that the enemy's devastators had torched, trying to help frightened women and children while building barricades and traps to cover the army's rear. Skirmishes, sleeping on straw under wet canvas, eating pottage, and longing for home. Jonas felt a warm joy wash over him as he saw his men smiling and cheering. May the spirit bless them, his brave, uncomplaining heroes who had followed him through a plague of hardships. The previous afternoon they had caught up with the king's men, who had halted on this moor, trapped by the flooded pass into the town of Tamset. The army of truth arrived in driving rain and camped beneath the brow of the moor on its east side. Jonas had not felt overly confident then, despite having superior numbers. Tamset Moor was a large plain, big enough for thousands of men to engage in warfare, but laden with risks. Uneven clumps of twisted, wiry, blue-grey moorgrass sprouted from the thin, rocky soil. To the west of the moor, a steep drop into the town on one side and sea on the other could be navigated by goats, but was dangerous for men and impossible for horses. The path to the south of the moor, a wide, straight road in summer, had been overcome by the spring rains, transformed into a fast-flowing river. To the north, a rocky outcrop scattered with prickly briar loomed. It was a forbidding place, and this was the Studenites' last stand. They would be resolute. Would you like any more?
Wow. No, that's perfect. I love all the negative early on, all the negatives, what was expected, because we often write about what's there, but rarely about what's missing or what we're expecting, and there's something different.
Mhm.
Um, and then it's very atmospheric, all the weather and the description and the just very, for anybody who doesn't know of the era, which is how historical works and fantasy works. If you historical, where you know a certain amount of history, but the author then fills in any gaps.
Mhm.
And then fantasy, you have sort of a new to you, and you can imagine without giving too much detail. And it felt a really good balance.
Yeah.
And very vivid verbs, very vivid description, and from start to finish. I love the metal head. It's kind of almost, rather than saying it's a person,
Mm.
it's thinking outside the cliched box of what would be a normal way of describing something, but just actually that little touch of something, just a different way of saying something, quite normal. And there's lots of peaks and troughs, the confrontation, and then the lull, and then and it doesn't even need to be action. It's either dialogue or something happening, and then there's a quiet, and it just, I've probably said that, I have said this before, and not necessarily to you, but there's only one James Patterson, I know it's a different genre, but James Patterson book, there's only one of his I've read in one sitting, and that was called Step on a Crack, with him, a collaboration with him and Michael Letwidge. And there was so many, in a way, too many, because his short chapters are very short as well. They have his, for an average of sort of 75,000 words, he has about 140 chapters. And so an average of 500 words, and some of them are really short. And he goes from detective to villain, and so on. So you have, at the end of each of these very short chapters, you have either a reveal, or something is about to be revealed, and you know you've got to read two chapters. Very cleverly done. You know you've got to read two chapters before you find out what that is or what it means, if you've just found
Mhm.
out something. And it was exhausting.
Yes.
Um,
Sounds like
and
it.
yeah, so I think it is important to have however you do it, whether it is action or whether it's confrontation. It's a skill, really, to have your peaks, and but to remember it is exhausting if you have too many peaks. So it's
Mm.
nice to have the lulls in between, a bit of description, or a confrontation is over. I know that was great.
Thank you.
So do you, where this one finishes, will it go straight into the next book, or is there going to be a gap in between? And
There,
in
there is,
theory, there you can read them separately as
yes,
standalones.
there is a gap of 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
Um, and I'm trying to make the second one readable in its own right,
Mm,
although one or two beta readers have spotted immediately, is this a sequel? And I think,
right.
well, what do I have to do to kind of, I mean, obviously for people who have read the first one, you
Mm,
do want there to be some links,
yes, because
but
a reference to something happened,
mhm,
but without going into the detail. If they want the detail, then go and read book one. because you
Hmm.
almost want to be, and some readers, um, once they realise it's book two, that even if you can read it as a standalone, they'll want to go back and read the beginning so that the second one makes sense. But
A
yes, I mean,
couple of
you want
weeks
there to be
ago,
some references previously
a
without repeating it all.
couple of weeks ago, I read a book which was the fourth in a series,
Mm,
and I enjoyed it. And I thought, I suppose I really ought to go and read the other three, but I didn't need to. It
no.
had been ring fenced in such a way that I didn't need to go back with the main character because he'd gone into a completely new scenario.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing because, obviously one does want readers to take more of the books in the series.
Mm,
And of course, there are lots of the series where you couldn't possibly sort of read something in the middle because you'd be so baffled.
um,
Um,
it's tricky, isn't it? You want there to be a fine line to be able to drop in little bits, or this happened, 6 months ago or something, without regurgitating, without repeating it. So
mm,
your audience who hasn't read the previous book, it doesn't need to. They don't feel they're missing anything, but they're aware that something happened. Whereas with those who have, you don't want to bore them by repeating too much.
mm,
I think it's whatever's relevant to the current book. So if it's not relevant to book two or to a character, how they're acting, for instance, if he was wounded in book one, you might make reference to a year ago he received a
yeah,
wound, and then
yeah.
readers might want to go back to book one to find out how that happened.
And you do always need backstory. So, even in the beginning there, it's clear that Yonis has a backstory as to why he is losing his reason when presented with this particular man.
Mm,
Um, and so, I mean, that does drip out as the novel proceeds. But you would have the same in a sequel that's what has happened in the first novel is a backstory to what's happening in the second novel.
mm,
And yes, I could even do a prequel to the first novel if I put my mind to it.
yeah.
And I was having a chat with one of my beta readers a few days ago, and I thought I might have to go that way because I can't at the moment. I think I want to do a third one, but
Mm,
I can't get any ideas as to where to take it.
right. What you could do you do a newsletter?
No.
Right. Because most authors have ideally do newsletters,
Hmm.
and they quite often do reader magnets. So it might be a short prequel. So you might do a short novella or a
Hmm.
novelette, even say 20,000 words, um, of what a prequel to book one, as a sign up to my newsletter, and you get a free prequel.
Right.
So if you
Okay.
wanted, if you felt there, not necessarily there was anything missing, but that you enjoy it so much that you might want to give readers an extra bit of content, then
Hmm.
either you could put it up on Amazon for whatever, say 1.99, but free if you get it, if you sign up to my newsletter. Then
Hmm.
it's extra value for money. They're getting not only something for free, but something that they would normally have to pay 1.99 for.
Hmm.
Okay. Anyway, thank you. Always lovely to see you.
You're welcome.
And
Are you going
yes.
to ask me the question that I dread?
Oh, okay. About ideas? No.
No.
Okay.
About marketing.
Oh, yes. How do good question. We could have another session on marketing.
We could indeed, and
Yes.
I I think there's just something about the logic in my head of the tiny, tiny probability of success with any form of book advertising, that I just shy away from it. I I do some Facebook posts, as you know, and that's about it, really. Um,
Well, I've just started listening again to podcasts. I've had a big gap,
hmm,
and we've covered podcasts quite recently. And there's one I've discovered called Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. They
mhm,
did it so that there were keywords, these old hashtags and so on, SEO. Um, that's why they called it such a long name. And in the first few, they trip up and say, "Why do we call it this? We called it this because of keywords." And they're two American ladies, and some they aim to be within 15 minutes, and some of them are mini sodes, they call it mini
mhm,
episodes, where they're only about 5 minutes, and there might be a little nugget of information, and it's really interesting. I don't know how many there are altogether. I'm listening to it on Apple Podcast. There are loads going from 20th of February 2020 to scrolling up and up and up. I don't know whether it's still ongoing. To 6 days ago, so it's obviously still going. So they're two ladies who provide a marketing service to self-published authors, and they're talking about all the things that you can do, like newsletters and Goodreads and
mhm,
book funnel and all that kind of thing. But it's good, even if you know it already, to listen to these things and go, oh yes, I've forgotten about that. It's like Goodreads and LinkedIn and Pinterest. They're not really on my radar, and I know they should be. But
mhm,
again, it's the age-old question: do you pick one or two things and concentrate on those, or do you go everywhere and do a
mhm.
bit of each?
Yes.
It's
Well, another
the
thing
ideal
that,
answer is, do you go on all of them and do all of it, but then you get no writing done.
yes, and that's the other question. How much time do you spend on marketing a book versus writing the next one? Somebody
Exactly.
said to me a couple of weeks ago, she said, well, probably your best way of marketing your first book is to write your
Write
second
another
book.
one. Exactly. Yeah, Brian Cohen, who does ads for, it used to be Amazon ads for authors, it's now ads for authors, because he does Facebook
Mhm.
and so on as well. Brian with a Y. He said, yeah, nothing sells your last book like your next one.
Mm.
And some people, I don't want to depress you, but some people don't read books until there are three in a series, so they
Yes.
can read all three
Mhm.
in one go. So I'm working on the third one of that, and I'm working on compiling, because I'm got my sixth coming out. Henry Goes to the Cinema, and then they're quite short. Second to the sixth are short ones. So then I'm my project for after Swanwick, which I'm teaching at Swanwick Writers' School next weekend for a week, which would be
Mhm.
lovely, is then to put them in book form, because at the moment they're only ebooks.
Mhm.
And then so that will be kind of newish content. Yes, and Sarah Kerwin, who's one of my only two at the moment. I have an experts area of Self Pub Fest. Herself and Greer Grover. Sorry, Greer. I should know your surname. They're two, one's Sarah is the Author Bridge. She has her business is called the Author Bridge. Greer is a editor in the main, and Sarah emailed me today because I've invited them to do tell us about your service. So it's a
Mhm.
side
Oh, okay.
to this. So if you provide a service, instead of talking about their books, they're talking about the service they provide.
Mhm.
And she's emailed me today, just in reply to an email I sent her, saying, "How do you get any writing done?" Because she's just in the process of setting up this business,
Mhm.
and so although she's been doing it for a while, on and off, it's now concentrating on it. And I haven't answered her yet, but really, it's to, if you can, split your day up. So get up at a certain time, deal with your emails for no more than an hour, then write for 3 hours if you're a morning person, and then do whatever you need to do thereafter your day job or something, or do your day job, write for an hour in the morning, and then do your day job and write for another hour or two. But I like to write early because I'm more of a morning person. And then if I carry on writing, and I can carry on writing, then great.
Mhm.
I'll write for the whole day. But I've just been concentrating on and thank you for buying my 2027 writer's diary.
Oh, you're
So I'm just in the process of I've got the 2028 ready and the 2027 versions of these. So I have dog, cat, garden, entertainment, and transport. But they're Sunday to Saturday. So they're
mhm,
for the American audience, and WI I think, is WI, a Mothers Union anyway, and
mhm,
the railway works Sunday to Saturday. But on the whole, we do Monday to Sunday, don't we, here in the UK?
mhm,
So that's my project at the moment. I'm preparing for Swanwick. So yes,
mm.
when do we have time? But I think splitting your day up, if you can, if your day job is flexible, is a way to do it. Just set aside, right? Say I'm going to write. And my favourite statistic, 300 words a day, is 109,500 words a year. So if you can do 300 words a day, then, as I said to one of my editing clients, that 300 words, because he said, "Oh, I hope to get. Thank you." I was delighted with the edit on his first book, and he said, "Oh, I'll send the second book when I get round to starting it. Obviously finishing it before he sends it to me." And I said, "Well, 300 words a day is 109,000." I said, "Yeah," but and he emailed back and he said, "Yes, but you need to find the right 300 words.
Yeah,
That's the trick." Exactly.
indeed. Yeah.
That's the trick. But we don't
And,
worry. We don't worry too much. Some people do. Don't worry too much about the first draft
mm,
because it's just getting the idea. If anything like me with a terrible memory, it's just getting the idea out onto paper and then worry about the quality thereafter.
mhm.
So thank you, Beth.
You're
Always a
welcome.
pleasure. And see you next time for coffee and commute, if not something else in the meantime.
Okay. Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much. Bye bye.
Bye.